Hey everybody, it's Wayne. It has been a crazy day in the Roma sphere. Midweek updates, so much to go over today, including, of course, the sale of Zaniolo to Galatasaray, and then we have Roma stadium plans being approved one step further to construction. And on top of that, we also have Wayneinrome getting his fitness back. So a lot to unpack here. And the first thing I want to look at is this Zaniolo deal. What's going on with that? Because it was quite the package, as you could see here. So we're looking at about 16 and a half guaranteed. That's no matter what. That's what's coming in. And on top of that, there's going to be about 13 million in add-ons, 50% of which are said to have been easy to obtain. And then you've got a 20% sell-on clause with a 35 million euro release clause. So there's a lot going on here. On top of that, there's also an option on two youngsters. One who's born in 2003, you may have heard before, Yusuf Demir. He was at Barcelona. He goes on loan to Galatasaray. Barca's unable to reclaim him because of their financial difficulties, so he ends up signing for Galatasaray. The second here is actually Efe Akman, midfielder, class of 2006. I've got a little bit of a new setup going on here. I hope the visuals look better. I hope the audio is crisp and clear. Let me know how it sounds on your end. But, so looking back at this deal, guys, I like the 16.5. I was anticipating something a little bit less involved. Let's say maybe like something like 22 to 24 with like an add-on of 3 million, if he achieved X amount of appearances for Galatasaray. And then you get to like the interesting part, which is the 20% sell on, but the 35 million euro release. This is, I think, a double-edged sword in the sense that who is going to end up paying 35 million euros in the summer for Zaniolo? Okay, let's say he does a great job in Turkey. At the end of the day, it's still the Turkish league. And what you do there, I don't want to say it can be taken with a grain of salt, but it's almost like he's separated out on this island now, and you're banking on the fact that somebody's going to come and rescue you one day for 35 million euros, which is a lot. It's a lot for an Italian club. Look at how much has been spent in this past January. The January Mercato was really, really low for Italian clubs. Almost none of them spent anything. If any deals were made, they were loan deals or, not even obligations. I think in years past, we've seen a lot of Italian teams utilize payments where it would be a loan for 1 year with an obligation to buy, but that is not even here right now. This is not a thing in Italy. So I don't know if it is going to be Juventus. We saw that Milan, where it's not paying, was not interested in paying something even relative to 35 million for Zaniolo. So what happens to him now as he goes out to Turkey? And he's joining other Italians there, which I think is pretty funny in a way, though, such as Lucas Torreira, who, of course, was with Fiorentina last year. Dries Mertens is out there, and there's a few others. I forget if Borini is actually there. I know he's had a few goals in the past season. So let's see that Galatasaray squad. I'm going to pull that up right now. So we've got, yes, of course, Mertens, but then Yilmaz, who was linked to Inter. He never joined. Juan Mata, interesting there. Fernando Muslera and Mauro Icardi. So you're going to have a Zaniolo, Icardi, Dries Mertens trident there. That's actually super interesting. I wouldn't mind watching this team. Anybody else there on top of that? Nelson? No one that I could think of that's like a standout guy. Sergio Oliveira, who, of course, we know. Batafimbi Gomes, who was a Ligue 1 legend about a decade ago. It's funny to see him still out there doing his thing. We used to use Gomes in FIFA, actually, a lot because he was so fast, and this guy would just get goals. He would make them. Throw some comments in there. I want to hear your thoughts on the Zaniolo transfer as well, your feelings right now. And if we're talking about like an emotional level, I want to say I don't care. Because I do care, because Zaniolo had a lot of potential, and he was somebody who has had some great moments for Roma. He is the guy who scored the only goal for the Conference League final. Roma gets their first European trophy ever because of that. Secondary, there was also some great goals, some great moments along the way. And I'm thinking like the road to the Conference League final. I'm thinking of his first goal that he ever scored for Roma, which was such a beautiful, I think that was against Sassuolo, where he put like two defenders on their heels. So looking back, there was some good moments. And then, of course, the injuries come. Not one, but 2 ACL tears. How you doing, Marco? And thanks for jumping in more. And we're going to be getting to those Pinto comments as well. I've got some good ones lined up. So when those ACL injuries happened, Zaniolo comes back after about 2 years, 2 full seasons of being on the sidelines. And it's a rocky road. We know that we were thinking that he was going to lose that agility. He did to a degree, but I think that Zaniolo's problem came down to the goals actually that he scored, because he got it in his head that he could score these wonderful solo efforts and that he didn't need anybody's help and that he could be the guy. And he forgot, in a sense, how to play like a teammate. And he wasn't combining well this entire season. I don't think he has. Does he even have a goal? Does anyone want to run the stats, Zaniolo's stats this season? Maybe 1 goal, 1 assist throughout all competitions. It could even be 0. I wouldn't be surprised. But as we look at this situation, I think Roma did phenomenally well. I think Tiago Pinto worked magic in this one. So the Turkish transfer season actually ends today. Their Mercato market runs a little bit longer. And at a time where I'm thinking Zaniolo is just going to ride the bench until summer, his value is going to be half, he's going to be that much closer to an expiring contract. Like, Roma is really, I'm trying to use like a PG word here, but not in a good spot with how Zaniolo leaves us. And it's like, what do you do now? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, a Turkish team comes and you're like, oh, actually, I had no idea. Like, personally, me speaking, I had no idea that Turkish teams had an extended transfer season, that it was a little bit different. So this is massive. Looking at these figures, just again, I'm going to pull them up here. So we've got 16 million up front, 16 and a half, I should say, 13 million euros in add-ons, 35 million release clause, and 20% of the sell-on. Let's say that Zaniolo goes for 30, 32, whatever it is, and Galatasaray says, okay, yeah, that's good enough for us, even if you didn't meet the release clause. 20% of 30 is 10%. That's 6 million euros. So not bad. By the way, there was I think a 15% sell-on clause with Zaniolo going away from Inter whenever he got bought by another club, leaving Roma. And that fee, I'm understanding, is only paid on the base. So if that's 15 or 20%, that's only going to the 16 and a half you see there. So that might be, less than 4 million euros, which isn't all that bad. Good stuff. Marco, I'm going to get to some comments here. Says, I'm sorry that Zaniolo's story ended like this. And I too am, in a way, because I supported him very much. I felt like I always advocated for him, as did many fans. Many fans had his back and wanted to get him through the tough times as he had early on in this season. And he was adored. He could have been really a king of Rome if he had wanted to be that. However, we see that it's just dollars which get into his head, and his agent should have advised him here, I think, better. I should have told him, like, you know what, sign the new contract, and then maybe, you put in a year or 2 of good work for Roma, you help the team, and in turn, maybe someone bigger comes along, maybe like an Atletico Madrid or somebody like that, or maybe Juventus, bids 50 or 60 million for you, and you get what you want. That is how you advise a player. You don't advise them to not accept to not go out there and give your all at any time. You never want to be a young player who's starting to put their foot down. That's such a bad look, and it's terrible advising. NM says, NM, it's your first time clocking in here. Hello, how you doing? I really don't understand how much fans have been willing to throw him to the side to uncritically take the club's side. He acted badly, but the club was purely petty about this. So let me know, what do you mean by petty? How is the club petty in these regards? Because I see it as, disagree with me. Let's have a discussion, right? But I see it as a 23, 24-year-old who wasn't getting his way, who for 2 years got paid, for 2 years had zero input, and then came on the field, wasn't linking well with his teammates, wasn't having offensive output, and then asks for not only a transfer raise, but then a raise, but then a transfer away from the club. To me, it was baffling. I'm happy they got a good fee, but geez, there was no need for how it played out. I'm kind of lost with how you mean. So just let's keep going with that. I wanted to hear your side of it. Adnan says, hello, how are you? I'm happy for Zaniolo and looking for good times ahead. And you know what? Shake hands. You get the money. Roma gets the money. Zaniolo gets what he wants. And this is not only good for both the club as well as the player, but Roma also gets to add this towards their budget. So when it comes to satisfying financial fair play, Zaniolo was bought in for nothing. So all of the money that comes from this deal is positive on the balance sheet for Roma, which actually does make a very big deal come the summer. That's a good move for Zaniolo, honestly, Marco says. And also respect, Morin states here, for Pinto for holding himself accountable for Vigna and Chamorro de fouls. And I feel like this is probably a good time now to get to the Pinto press conference. But before that, I want to go over what's been happening with the stadium. So the other day, Roma and I think the club president, they met to discuss what was going to happen. And it looks like, I'm going to try to get you a little stadium update here. I'm going to try to get you the quote from Berardi. This meeting was also attended by the mayor of Rome, Roberto Gualtieri, and he seems optimistic about this going through, about Roma actually getting shovels into the dirt and getting the stadium on the ground. So Berardi spoke to the audience and he said, "We as Roma are very happy, and I'm bringing greetings from Dan and Ryan Friedkin, of course, the club's owners, and they strongly believe in this project and its objective to launch us into the Olympus of European football. An important thing is to respect the dates, and in Italy, this is not always the case. We brought the documentation on October 3rd. Respecting the dates is essential to show all citizens, fans, and potential investors how much you believe in this project. There was a continuous dialogue and a lot of transparency. All documents and plans have been published online and are accessible to all. I think there's a very open dialogue. And this is going to be very close to the Tiburtina train station. If you've been to Rome, you know there's two mains. There's Termini and Tiburtina, which are not all that far from each other. He says, I want to give Roma fans a home, yada, 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 and that where the ownership is directly involved in the design of the stadium. The Friedkin family is not looking for partners of the stadium, as was reported earlier in the week. They want to continue this project on their own. So one reason why the Friedkins invested in this, of course, there's the romantic side of it. But one aspect is that you have a big market here, which is Rome, of course. And on top of that, no private stadium. And that definitely correlates to the value and the purchase price of this club, as well as the debt. So once you have that private stadium, you can collect all the gate receipts. You can host 24/7, 365 sporting events throughout the year, concerts, rent it out for maybe someone wants to get married at the Roma Stadium, anything like that. So you can make so much more money. And like I said, you get to collect all those gate receipts rather than paying a lease, as the way with most, including Roma and Lazio, both due to the city, to all Italian cities right now. The exclusion being Atalanta. I think Udinese privately owns theirs, and Juventus, which is one reason why Juventus gets to be the big dog at the dog park right now. Okay, so let's keep throwing in the comments. Definitely. Burak says, I'm a fan of Galatasaray. This is the biggest transfer in our history, but we cannot celebrate it. Really, life is very strange. And definitely want to say I'm so sorry to see what's going on in Turkey. I don't really feel like the need to make a comment about how many people have passed away, but it's devastating. This is, I think, the largest natural disaster or any disaster I've ever lived through, and it's a shame. And I really feel for Turkey as well as Syria, and man, I say my prayers for these people because it's tough. I've seen. I don't like that people on Twitter and social media are posting pictures of people who are hurt or who have passed, and they're I don't want to say compensating, but they're gaining traction off of other people's grief. These people deserve privacy right now, and it's a really delicate situation. You don't want to be out posting stuff. I very much like what I saw from Dries Mertens today, that he was out helping. I put it as my Instagram story, in that he's out there, delivering food and providing, any type of accessories that are needed, maybe like bedspreads, couches, or any type of supplies, not couches, mattresses, pillows, and things like that. And that's beautiful to see. But I think this is going to take a worldwide response, to be honest. And I was showing my kids, I'm a teacher, during the day just about what's going on, because sometimes, like, as Americans, we're not always privy, we're not always knowledgeable about what's going on in the rest of the world. But this, I really think the international community has to come together, because these are tragic scenes. And like I said, I'm really sorry for what's happening in Turkey right now. Marco asks, did Pinto get any questions about Solbakken? And yes. And he speaks about how he's unable to register him for European competition because of financial issues regarding to financial fair play, that is. NM says, I think the club has the right to be angry after he declined Bournemouth offer, but declaring out front that he will, quote unquote, sit in the stands for 6 months no matter what doesn't help at all. Perhaps it did, though, because now we see him transferred, and Roma gets a lot from that. We get 16.5 up front, perhaps up to 13, 20% of future sale, and option on those 2 youngsters, who is supposed to be one of the best youngsters in Turkey. It said the second name here, and that's, nope, don't edit. There we go. Efe Akman, the midfielder, very young, as well as Barca's ex-winger, Youssef Demir, who's got quite the left foot on him. I was watching some highlights of him today, and is one of probably the most valuable, I would say, the top 100 most valuable youngsters in European football right now. So that's some good stuff right there. Okay. It says a lot, but that by the end of the guy asking to leave was being more gracious, saying it was good than the club, who has a good point about lack of production, transfer requests, etc. Yeah, I've actually got Zaniolo's comments up here, and he said, I came to you, this is his Instagram showing memories of his time at Roma, writing a heartfelt goodbye. And he says, I came to you who welcomed me as if I were at home. You made me grow. You gave me a chance that I tried to take with all my heart, always honoring the history you represent, fighting for your colors, sweating for the shirt every time I wore it. The journey is made up of unique emotions that I'll treasure forever, like that goal on the 25th. It looks like his production team got busy for this one. I'm clicking the link on Instagram, so you can see that on his. Maybe I'll post the link here as well for anyone who's following the comments. Yeah. There you go. And then also continues, says, especially given someone like Zaniolo, who for better or worse is a big part of the club's post-Totti history. Burak says, nobody notices, but Ifi Akman is a great opportunity for Roma. Akman has great potential. That's good to know, man. That is, intriguing. I like those options. Pinto, smart as a whip in this one. Marco asks about the stadium. Is there a date? They want to get it done by 2027 for the club's 100th anniversary. Whether that will be possible or not, I'm just hoping those shovels get in the ground ASAP. And NM says, the club will find some new heroes, I'm sure. Looking forward to Claudio Cassano from the Primavera. Same. Yeah. Is it Cassano who just scored that goal? I don't think it was, but Cassano is highly regarded in the Primavera. But there was a player, the kid who received Totti's armband on the day that he retired, just scored an exceptional volley. You've got to see that one. I think Roma posted it, and it's from their Primavera. I think let me look for you right now before I get to Pinto's press conference. Roma Primavera goal. I think it'll probably come up if I just put that into the news. And nothing right now, but if you can find that for me, I don't want to stall here. That would be very much appreciated. Throw that in the comments for everybody. Okay, on to the press conference. Pinto had a lot to say today. He spoke about Solbakken, Shomurodov, Viña, Zaniolo, of course, the situation with Mourinho, and more. Should I go over every line? I think I'm going to try to find the best ones for you. I've got a bunch of quotes here we're going to go through. Okay. So it's kind of like an abbreviated version. He said, obviously we were aware of what was happening with Zaniolo's sale, and we were pleased that he decided to continue because it means he believes a lot in the project. Mourinho. So he's admitting that there was something going on with Mourinho and possibly going to Brazil or other suitors that were being mentioned in the news. and if he was going to continue working with the club, because remember how 2022 ended and Roma was in bad form, right? Like we were playing terrible, we couldn't get it, and so much of that coincides with Dybala and his return. On Zaniolo, he says, it's normal that I thought I could get more money. A week ago, we had a higher offer, but then after everything that had happened, we considered this solution, which is not bad. Although he says, I'm never completely happy, but I have doubts that we could have done better. I'm going to post that one up right there. Oh, no, I had it. So could he have done better? Not right now. Not in February. For him to get anything is remarkable. And so this is how it went with Bournemouth. Bournemouth approaches Zaniolo and says, we're going to pay you like 5.5 million euros. And he says, no. And if I'm to believe the story that he didn't even meet with the Bournemouth representative who flew into Rome to meet him, that's crazy. And then realizing what was going to happen for him, and that Milan was not going to bid for him, and that a better club was not seeking him, Zaniolo decides that he actually does want to go to Bournemouth, but it was too late. Why? Because they bought a player. They bought another Serie A player, actually, on the left wing. And at that point, Zaniolo, what are you going to do? All out of options. Leeds apparently did not want to get him. Everton is also fighting for relegation. I'm not sure if there was really ever a transfer there. So, rough. Sorry to breathe into the microphone. That's probably annoying. Okay, I'm going to continue here. People always look for conflict between me and Mourinho, he says. In reality, we work for the good of Roma. This press conference will not create disagreements. We work for the same team. Roma play every 3 days, and I'll say this. It's no coincidence that the champions of Italy is the one who came out of Europe. Speaking as an Italian, I think we have a lot of work to do on the calendar to protect those who play in Europe. Let's see what happens with Atalanta and Fiorentina when they don't play in Europe. The issue goes beyond Roma's squad. Italy is a competitive team. It's not easy to play with 20 teams. He says we often have European games that create problems from us. And this is very much where Roma's problems stem from, and it's depth. Whether it's the Primavera not being experienced enough because they're young players, or not having quality depth because Roma can't afford it under certain financial parameters right now. I'll let him continue. He says, none of us can say that we have the players we have. We all know the stakes we have. That doesn't make any sense. None of us can say that we have the players we have. This was definitely not translated properly. But the players we signed have always had the coach's opinion, but neither Tiago Pinto nor Mourinho have all the players that they want. We can't do this kind of market. Just kind of like saying like we can't get any player that we want. We can't just go and get Fratesi if he's like 40 million euros. He says, I'm not afraid of you, and I take responsibility for those who have not done well at Roma. Those players who have been signed so far and have not done well are 100% my fault. And then he goes on, and he says, you talk about Viña and Shomurodov. They are my responsibility. And I think somebody mentioned it here in the comments as well, how it is. I think we've been waiting for this. We wanted to know where Shomurodov came out of. Why was he signed? Was this purely a Mourinho signing, or was there something more to it? And Pinto says, no, this is somebody I identified, somebody I brought to the club, and I take full responsibility for it. Viña, interesting situation. Viña, loved by Palmeiras, won the Brazilian championship with them, and was young, was like 23 or 24 years old when he was signed by Roma. Spinazzola went down, and Pinto, out of nowhere, is able to secure this left wing back. And on paper, it seemed like a very good pickup. I liked it. I watched videos of him, and I said, no, this looks like to be a good purchase. He ends up not fitting in, not being that quality of a player. I will make the excuse. I don't think the blood is on Pinto's hands. I think Viña was a very easily identifiable player who would have a good future in Europe. However, what we see now is like he just didn't get it. He didn't fit into Mourinho's plans. Maybe he would do better without so much defensive responsibility. But even for Uruguay, he wasn't starting. If you watch the World Cup group stage, Viña was not a starter. He got fringe minutes, maybe 5, 10 per game when he did get in. So, you can't make wine out of this grape, I guess. Where am I coming up with these weird analogies? Oh, jeez. I'm going to continue here. Keep throwing in comments. Throw up some likes there for me as well. Thanks, guys. Okay. Then he speaks about not being satisfied with the January Mercato. And he says, no, I felt the other years the team had improved. I can't say that the same for now because we lost 3 players and we got 2. We trust in Waynaldom's recovery, and I take responsibility, he says once again, and I'm not saying what I've said in the past. On to Zaniolo, he says, I have to say that Zaniolo was a difficult situation to handle. We had the solutions. The solutions were there, and it could have pleased everyone. He's talking about Bournemouth. But we didn't manage to do things the way we wanted to. With the stakes we have to cover, the market session had become difficult. Solbakken, Marco, pay attention. I'm very sorry because the FFP thing is no joke. I don't want to hide and say that it is important for the sustainability of the club, and it is difficult to do the market like that. With what Bournemouth's offer was, we could have done a big market to strengthen the team, but we couldn't do it. He says, there are things I could not change, but I want to be objective, and I am not satisfied with the mercato. As I've always said, the market has a 20 to 30% importance. I trust the coach, the technical staff, and the players. We have the conditions to do well. And then he's actually going to talk. He's going to mention what Roma would have done about the Zaniolo substitute. And he even mentions Ziyech as being a possibility, but then the talks broke down. Why did the talks break down? Well, obviously, it's because Zaniolo wasn't able to be sold. Okay, so what do we got here? He says, yes, there was a player who was going to come in, but I won't say who out of respect. We tried to do everything on a tight deadline. Then Nicolo decided to leave, and there were 15 days left. I don't want to talk about Zaniolo all press conference. He was loved in the city, but he decided to leave things, and things were settled. So I read this in Italian. I'm reading it in English right now off of Football Italia. However, he specifically mentioned Ziyech in Italian. I'm going to go to that. That's a better one. I'm going to go and I'm going to read you exactly what he said in Italian. Let me go to the part about Ziyech. Okay. There we go. Okay. When he's talking about the players that couldn't come, he says there was contact with Ziyech and his entourage, but it was just white smoke, or, it was just smoke because of the offer for Nicolo. So that's what he says. So nothing more there, but I just wanted to make note that definitely was said that Ziyech was the target there, which made a lot of sense. He's definitely somebody who could have helped Roma. I think his passing ability would help very much so in the build-up play, and especially when Pellegrini goes down, as Pellegrini has been involved in so many injuries this season. His fitness, he looks fatigued so much when he plays, that Ziyech could have come on and put in a really good performance. Okay, he continues. I'm going to keep going a little bit further in Pinto's press conference here. Where was I? Do I want to go? He's starting to talk about how I'm confident with the work with Roma and UEFA. We will have a competitive team in the Champions League, and they will choose who they want to take. But that is how it is now. So maybe a little jibe here at Financial Fair Play about who they make issues when they want to. Is, you look at other teams like Chelsea and how are they getting away with it. Then he says, when I talk about FFP, it's not that I want to justify my job. When I leave Roma, I want to be sure that I leave in the best possible way. We are third in the table, but we have to continue on this path. And then he was asked if Mourinho was aware of his feelings regarding financial fair play. And he said, Mourinho is the first to make these considerations, and he is the first to say all this when you want to spark conflict between us. These stakes we have to follow. I don't want to talk about Zaniolo, but the rejection to Bournemouth is a situation that put us in difficulty. We have to achieve certain goals, and if he had accepted, we were closer to our objective. I think we were managing to reach this plan with UEFA, that in the middle of the pitch, we're doing well. It's not that we have won the Scudetto, but we haven't won anything either. I don't want to look for excuses. I'm here for the good of Roma, and when I leave, Roma will be in a better situation. Then he talks about Karsdorp and how we're soon going to understand if he's available. My opinion is that Karsdorp will reintegrate into the squad. He can still put in a shift for Roma. He can still be depth, and it's in his interest. Like we're talking about agents today, right? And if you are an agent to Rick Karsdorp, what are you telling him? Like, think to yourself for a second. Because I'm thinking, I advise him, patch things up with your manager, go out there, play, and if you really don't want to stay, okay, but at least you're playing, you're increasing your market value, you're increasing your conversation when it comes to salary and what a team should be paying you, right? So make amends, get back on Mourinho's good side and be at the disposition. Be available for your coach and your club. And honestly, that's advice for like anybody. Maybe you have a kid. Maybe you are a teenager and you're looking to like get in your team. Have a good relationship with your boss and your manager, your coach. Do what they want you to do. Because there's a quote, if you give people what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. And that's very true in life. Finally, I got that one. He's asked if Roma are lacking some options on the wing. And he says, in that role, we have Selig, Zalewski, Spinazzola, Karsdorp, Vigna, and El Shaarawy. We play with a different system in that space. There is Dybala, Pellegrini, Solbach, and Volpato. So he says, I don't think we're lacking out wide. Of course, Spinazzola has now gotten injured, though, and he's out until March. And Vigna, of course, is away now. But that still leaves Roma with Selig, Zalewski, El Shaarawy, and Karsdorp, given the circumstances. He speaks a little bit more about Vigna. He says, Vigna was a player who could give us a hand, then to regain his market value and strengthen the team, we managed to set him out on loan and get a defender who could rebalance the team. And finally, he speaks about, I want to look at some comments first before I chew your ear off going through this press conference here. It was a long one. Burak says, will Zaniolo give a great performance? I'm afraid if he's like Dele Alli, I hope he wins us the championship. Well, Burak, what I could say for Zaniolo is that this season he worked really hard. He, at least like on the pitch, he had a good, his behavior was good, like his body language was good. And he worked hard in the defensive phase. His issue this year was linking up with Tammy Abraham and honestly competing against Dybala. So Dybala is our Roma's set guy on the right wing, drops back, comes to the middle, and that's exactly the way that Zaniolo liked to play. Zaniolo was starting to play left wing as well, but then there's Pellegrini. So in the pecking order, Zaniolo started to drop down, especially as his combinations and his game IQ seemed to really be lacking. When it comes to the Turkish league, though, I think there's major differences, right? And Italy is known for being defensive, and that's changing, but still true to a point. I would say 60 to 70% of the teams play with caged defenses, but I think if the play is a bit more open, I think if the quality drops off a notch or two, which we could agree without, I'm not trying to, throw shade, as they say. I'm not trying to be negative towards the Turkish league, but I think that this could be really good for Galatasaray, even if it's for a year, as well as Zaniolo. I think he could score, honestly, some really big goals for Galatasaray. He could become important, especially I don't think he's going to be eligible for European play, but depending on where Galatasaray is right now. And Mourinho says Darboe is coming back from injury, which is good. Yeah, man. Darboe went out with that ACL tear, or was it a meniscus? It was a major injury. And with Darboe being this defensive midfielder who did so good under Fonseca and emerged, had since lost his place following the hiring of Mourinho. But Darboe could be an option going forward for sure. And if not, it's still good to get him back and get him playing again, right? Because if they're not going to keep him long term, this is a guy who is probably used to strengthen the team, getting further to another player. Like if we're still trying to bring Fratesi back in the summer, who I think unanimously, we all want Fratesi, right? Like we want the Roma kid to come back. One of the best top 5 center midfielders in Serie A right now, maybe top 3. I think we could all agree on that, right? Marco says, so many players left Roma since Mourinho came. So many unfulfilled potentials. Jose is a genuine career killer. Well, let's look at who left, Marco. Let's go to Transfer Market. And let's go to Roma. And let's see who is actually left in the past year and a half. And guys, keep throwing comments in. We'll keep this going as long as it takes today. Let's see. Just trying to make it. Top departures. Okay. And these are all within the past few years, Marco. Nicolo Zaniolo, and that's going to come in at 16.5. And then, of course, that could rise to well over 30. Cengiz Under, guy who's now in France for Marseille, 8.5 million. Also at Marseille. Jordan Veretout, 11 million. Also at Marseille, Pau Lopez, 12 million. I mean, these aren't guys who are, well, maybe maybe honestly Justin Kluivert is. He's on loan at Valencia still. I wonder if Kluivert, he's having a decent season. If that kid can come back and be a dangerous left winger, I think he honestly could have a role going into next season. But look at these players, Marco, and anybody that's really questioning Pinto. He had so much to clean up. But when I look at these players like Under, and Olsen even, and Felix Guillan, Florenzi, who else? Like Diawara, he's able to get rid of. Carles Perez. Like, these are guys who are just not good enough. They're not at that level that's going to help Roma fight for the Scudetto, fight for second place even. They're like medium quality. They're good for the French league. Like, I think that now these guys are where they should be, probably with the exception of Veretout. I think Veretout didn't fit into Mourinho's style. He's probably not I don't want to say where, not disciplined enough to be a center mid in Mourinho's setup, but at the same time, like, he's somebody who could have went back to Fiorentina and had a very good Serie A career. He's somebody who could have helped Milan right now get out of their rut for sure. But as Francisco says here, he cleared so much dead weight. He had to deal with the Monchi stuff. Who's the guy that came after Monchi from Petracchi? Like, so many acquisitions that were costly and were really heavy on the wage bill and the overall transfer bill being amortized over 3, 4, 5 years, big contracts, that it's like Roma got put in such a hole because of bad buying. Roma cannot buy bad. We don't get the money in per year from media rights or from stadium deals, collecting those gate receipts in order to have bad. Every purchase, more or less every purchase, has to be shrewd. It has to be one that increases in value and helps Roma fight to get back to the top 4. And why do I stress the top 4? Because that's where the Champions League money is. That's where you're going to get 50 million euros in TV deals just for being there. Europa League, not such a big deal. You win the Europa League, you might get 23 overall over the course of the entire tournament. Marco says, let's leave it there. I can give you at least 20 players who are good enough for Roma. Well, like I said, the one I'll give you is Veretout. I think Veretout could have had, like I said, that future for a good club, but he just doesn't fit. And sometimes there are good players who just don't fit in a coach's setup. And when you hire a coach like Mourinho, and you're going to hire any big coach, they're going to sometimes push out players and bring in players that you don't agree with because they have a way that they want to play. They have a mechanism. If we look at somebody like Matic comes on a free, right? He's supposed to be this rotational player who helps Mourinho solidify his tactics. Unfortunately, because of injuries, he ends up being like a set starter at 35 years old, which wasn't fair to him. He wasn't brought in for that purpose. But anyway, a couple more quotes here. He says, out of respect for the club, I won't say who would have taken Zaniolo's place. And he had mentioned that it could have been Ziyech, but I'm wondering if there's somebody else too. I wonder if he would have sacrificed that role and let Solbakken go ahead and play in order to bring Fratesi back. Something in me just feels like he would have wheeled and dealed to get him, tried his best. Although Carnevali has no reason to sell right now. But the player is unhappy. The player wants to come to Rome. He's expressed this publicly. Pinto has spoken about this publicly, even way back, I think, late December, early January, as the market opened. So maybe there was somebody else. Maybe, I don't know, speculate here. Throw some names. Who would be a good player to replace Zaniolo right now in the summer? Who do you think? I'm going to write that. And if you're watching this recording, write in too. Who is your ideal Zaniolo replacement? Also, guys, how's the audio and the video quality today? Because I'm using a little bit of a different setup. I've got my phone not plugged into my earbuds, AirPods, whatever, the Beats, as I usually do. I've got my little anchor here, which has been really helpful, and I've got my light to my side. And it's very comfortable. It's natural. Maybe I'll switch the computer so I'm not always looking off screen like that. But let me know what you think about that. Morin says Tadic. Yeah, Tadic's name was mentioned, but Tadic is like 34 years old. I don't know how much of a future, but I actually got to see Tadic play in person. I went to Ajax Stadium versus Wilhelm II in 2018 with 3 of my buddies. what a time. And Ziyech actually was also there. He was on the pitch. But the guy who I kept watching and I was amazed by, Dusan Tadic. Kid was a player. I mean, he was 29, 30. We're not kids if you're in your 30s. But, yeah, like, he's got serious skill. Technique through the roof. Wonderful player to watch. But I have to think maybe it was somebody a little bit different. Marco says, I look a little bit yellowish. Maybe. The light's yellow. I think I can actually change the color. I can change that, but I'll figure that out later. Ceballos, the center midfielder, Danny Ceballos. Is he still? I wonder how his career panned out. I haven't heard much of him. But one guy who I've been watching quite a bit now is Danny Olmo. I saw him. I was in like a hotel a couple months ago, and no, I was in Quebec City, and I was flipping through the channels, and I came across, I think, the German league, and I saw Danny Olmo, and he was ripping it up, and I was like, yo, underrated. I think he had a pretty decent World Cup too. Maybe that's why, Marco. Sounds great. Excellent. So glad to hear. But so Tadic, probably, I have to think that it would have been a little bit more exciting than that. I want to believe. Ziyech, yeah, he would have been that guy, but maybe someone like I'm not thinking of. I know there's some people out there who like really, really watch these players. Maybe not that kid Baldanzi, although I really like him. Did you catch how good that kid was against Empoli? He was such an important player for that, man. He got past Roma's midfield quite a few times, playing off the shoulder, going in between the lines, in between the spaces, exploiting those gaps. Like, heck of a player, Baldanzi, 19 years old, 5'7", 5'8", and yeah, heck of a shift for them. Why Tadic? He's like 30 years old. Yeah, that's why I was thinking Marco. Like, it wouldn't have been Tadic, even though I saw his name in the news. I'm gonna finish up the press conference here. Pinto ends speaking about Mourinho's meeting with Roma management and if there's fears that Mourinho could leave if Roma failed to get into the top four. And he says, I must point out that the ownership has taken over the club for 2.5 years, and they have made many investments to make Roma more solid and strong. They have always said that they think about working rather than talking. I can't criticize them. And how many times have you heard Dan or Ryan talk? Never talk to the press. Sorry. He says, when I speak, I do it because I'm obliged, but we also have a duty to explain what we do. On Mourinho, I don't remember him saying he asked for a meeting. We talk often, and it's not like Mourinho is just any coach who needs to ask for a meeting. He says, I repeat, I understand that this is a topic you are trying to extrapolate, maybe like push out about, like get out of me, like you want me to expand, you want me to like almost like start to divulge stuff. He says, but the relationship between us should be discussed elsewhere. The subject of the Champions League, neither Mourinho nor I need extra pressure. We all know it's different playing it and not playing it. We do the maths at the end of the season. I don't want to say 100% one thing happens if we go into the Champions League or not. There are many things in between. And he says, we're sorry about the Coppa Italia, but I think we're doing well. I don't think we need extra pressure for the players. It's not like that. Cool. All right. That's the Pinto press conference wrapped up. Keep letting me know what you think about that. And there you go. A couple more quotes there in the banner section from Pinto for today. On other news, I've got good news. Wijnaldum, maybe he'll get minutes at Lecce. He played in the Primavera's game the other day, or with the Primavera, perhaps in a scrimmage. I don't think he can't play against another Primavera, but he played in a scrimmage with the boys, and apparently he had no pain and he's doing good, and perhaps he gets some minutes at Lecce this weekend, which will be 12 o'clock New York City time, 6 o'clock Italian time, last time I checked, unless I'm lying to you. I hope I'm not lying. Is it 2:45? No, it's 12. Yeah, we're correct. 12 and 6. 12 o'clock for me. Very good. Interesting news. Napoli Ultras have a relationship with Red Star. And guess what Red Star supposedly did? This was reported by Reuters. Reuters is the website, is the news company, one of the bigger ones for international news. And they're reporting today that during the Empoli match, Red Star Belgrade Ultras snuck into the Fedane section. Fedane is with boys. They're the two largest Roma Ultras groups, and stole their banners from Fidane because of their relationship with the Napoli Ultras. Fidane, Red Star. I'm going to post that article for you right now. So there's been, of course, this string of violence going on between the Ultras. We can remember that there was that issue a couple weeks ago with the Roma and Napoli Ultras fighting on the street, on the highway, not the street, on the highway, which got Roma and Napoli visitor bans for the away games. So, what's up, Martino? How are you, man? Thank you. Martino, massive YouTuber. This guy nothing can stop Martino right now. And he's been nice enough to come on my YouTube and talk with us when Roma played Milan. So maybe Martino, Zaniolo will be yours for the fine price of 35 million euros come this summer, depending on how that goes. But yeah. Marco says that's his Belgrade boys there, unfortunately. Marco, are you Red Star or a Partizan fan? Oh, man. All right. Other news. We covered the stadium. We covered the transfers, everything. Who do you think was that Mr. X? What happens this summer? I don't know. I think the club is better off without Zaniolo. I think this was the best case scenario going into February. I'm thinking to myself, it's January 31st, and I'm watching. I keep scrolling. I'm refreshing all of the news sites, waiting to see Zaniolo sold to Bournemouth for 35, or some type of angel investor that comes and grabs him, and the deal is resolved, and Roma doesn't have this player who's just going to rot on the bench. And out of nowhere, after this happens, who comes to Roma's rescue but Galatasaray? Was never expecting that, had no idea the Turkish Mercato extended into February, and this is a really good deal, I think, for Roma, guys. The options on these two exquisite Turkish youth players, the money up front, the bonuses, the future clause, the 20% future clause for any sale. I think Pinto did a dream job here, guys. I know some of you get frustrated with Pinto, but look at how much he's cleared out. Look at his job he has to do with the financial fair play parameters, with the expectations of getting back into the Champions League. And I think that you give this guy another summer, and we're talking business. Get into the Champions League, which Roma has a very good shot at right now. What are we at right now? We're in third place, yeah? Because Lazio tied Hellas Verona on Monday. I'm going to get you those numbers real quick before we sign off here. And standings are Napoli, of course, first, 56. Inter, 43. Roma, third with 40 points, guys. Lazio with 39. So by themselves, in third place, destiny is in their hands. Roma will continue to improve. Wijnaldum comes back soon. Maybe we get to see a little bit of Volpato if Pellegrini's form continues to suffer and his fitness continues to suffer. And yes, guys, put a like. This was a really, I think, productive midweek update. Like I said, so much that we talked today. And Martinez says, I'll be 80 by the time they spend that on a player. Yeah, Milan's got their own financial issues right now. What Italian club doesn't? Like, I'm watching, like, Inter, like, Skriniar is going to expire. He's going to go to PSG. They're going to lose their best guy. They might get Indica, and who knows? They keep trying to persuade Chris Smalling to go over. But the state of affairs is tough, man. Like, with these financial regulations in place, I don't want to say they have to do away with it, but they have to give leniencies, especially for teams who, like, don't privately own their stadiums. But, you know, Pinto's got to work around this. Roma's got to get back into the Champions League, I think, if we're going to make that salto di qualità, if that, you know, that jump in quality. Diego, first time jumping in? Nice to hear from you, Diego Cruz. Do you know anything about the two Turkish youngsters we have dibs on with Galatasaray? Yeah, so the first guy, the guy born in 2003, let me pull this up before we sign off. Yusuf Demir, he was at Barcelona, went on loan to Galatasaray, and then what I understand is they couldn't repurchase him, even though he was doing very well because of Barcelona's financial issues. And then the other player, Efe Akman, born in 2006, which would make him about, what's 3 plus 6, about 19 years old. Center midfielder, highly regarded as a up-and-coming Turkish player, somebody who will eventually play in their national team, is what they're thinking. So, cool. All right. guys, I think we'll talk soon. We're just approaching the 15-minute mark now. Thanks for everybody who came by. Let me know what more you'd like to see, what more you'd like discussed, how I can make this better. And send it to your Romanisti pals. And give your mother a kiss for me. No, I'm kidding. That's from, what is that from? Give your mother a kiss. Is that from Goodfellas? It's something. It's definitely something. Okay, we'll talk soon, guys. Ciao.